pretty as a picture, like sun upon the dew. Golden lights and satellites reflect the joy she knew. The nights are drawing in now, the summer's heading south. Leaves they fall upon this hallowed ground. Mother Earth, she's singing.
My name is Tim Williams, and I run a gallery in Linton, North Devon, called Tim Williams Fine Art. I first encountered the pottery of Waistel Cooper whilst living on a neighbouring farm to Colburn in West Somerset around 2010. I was immediately captivated by these strange organic forms and the sculptural elements that were unlike any pottery I had seen before. In 1957, Waistel married the yogi and spiritualist Joan Jean-Con, and she was living at Colburn Lodge on the West Somerset coast near the North Devon border. Colburn Lodge was entirely surrounded by ancient native woodland. Waistel was inspired by the flora, fauna and fungi that grew in the woods. Some of the characteristics of Waistel Cooper's unique style were these flared rims, this banded decoration, and the rough and rusty texture and colour.
We sing the songs the forest holds. Leaves they fall upon this hallowed ground.
Waistel was born in Ayr on the west coast of Scotland in April 1921. It was in this small fishing community that Waistel was encouraged to pursue the arts. He attended Ayr Academy, a state-run secondary school that boasted an outstanding purpose-built art department designed in 1907. Waistel's natural talent began to flourish, and he secured a scholarship to the prestigious Hospitalfield School of Art in Arbroath to study painting at the tender age of 16. Against this milieu of artistic productivity, Waistel had started to find a niche as a portrait painter. 2 surviving self-portraits in oils from his time at Hospitalfield display the skill and maturity of an artist far beyond that of a teenager. Britain declaring war on Germany in September brought the students' time at Hospitalfield to an end. The art school, given 2 hours' notice, would become home to 21 evacuees, and the situation compelled James Cowie to send the students home. Waistel took up his scholarship to Edinburgh College of Art shortly afterwards in October of 1939 to study in the School of Drawing and Painting. Invalided out of the army, Waistel resumed his studies at Edinburgh in October 1943, but left after a term, choosing instead to move to London and embark on a career as a painter in the thriving post-war art scene. The Icelandic art historian Björn Björnsson, who had recently moved to London to study at the Courtauld Institute of Art under Anthony Blunt, recalled being shown Waistel's Pimlico studio. Björnsson and Waistel struck up a friendship and soon became flatmates, sharing Pimlico digs where they would watch the German bombs from the roof. Björn had a small circle of Icelandic friends in London. Also at this time, Waistel met Alice Pendrell, a medical doctor known to family and friends as Penny. Waistel and Penny married in April 1946. Encouraged by their Icelandic friends and tired of London, the newlyweds decided to leave for Iceland in August of the same year. Waistel soon established a reputation as an innovative painter of considerable standing in the country and was offered a teaching position at a new art school to be opened in Reykjavik. Between March and October 1948, Waistel and Alice returned to England. This signalled the end of their relationship. Back in Iceland, Waistel befriended Gestur Thorgrimsson and his wife Sigrun Gudjonsdottir. Two artists recently returned from the Royal College of Art in Copenhagen. By March 1950, the young artists were joined by the Swiss painter Delinda Tanner, who had a short-lived romance with Waistel. Their pottery would become known as Laugarnarsleir, after the area of Reykjavik where their workshop was found. After a sailing tour of Europe in 1950, Waistel remained in Britain, determined to make inroads on the studio pottery scene. His parents had sold their newsagent business to John Menzies and retired to Porlock, buying a large thatched house called Merrifield. Waistel set up a workshop and kiln in the stables at Merrifield and spent the entirety of 1951 experimenting with rough stoneware bodies and wood ash glazes. Around 1953, Waistel approached Henry Rothschild, the owner of Primavera, an influential gallery showcasing the vanguard of British crafts. British pottery history books from the 1980s onwards have often repeated the unfounded charge that Waistel Cooper was a derivative follower of both Ree and Cooper, and whilst by the late 1950s the three potters would increasingly move towards rough textured pottery, their work was evolving in parallel, shown side by side at the principal exhibitions. Murray Fieldhouse would observe in a 1964 volume of Pottery Quarterly that Hans Cooper and Waistel Cooper began experimenting with surface textures, working over their pots with scrapers and turning tools after applying manganese to grogged bodies. In 1956, Waistel's work was included in an exhibition at the Scottish Crafts Centre and selected for reproduction in the Scottish Art Review. Around this time, his work was purchased for the leading department store Heels & Sons, who would stock Waistel's ceramics until the 1970s. In 1957, Waistel was one of the few contemporary potters to be illustrated in Wolf Mankiewicz and Reginald Hager's The Concise Encyclopedia of English Pottery and Porcelain. Waistel married the American sociologist, yogi, and spiritualist Joan Darcy Jeancon the same year, and moved into Colburn Lodge, near Porlock, where she had already been living. In 1958, Waistel's pottery was shown with Ruth Duckworth, Lucy Ree, and Hans Cooper at the Printmakers and Potters exhibition at Hill's Mansard Gallery. The four potters were clearly considered the most avant-garde practitioners of the medium at the time, and their work was shown alongside prints by John Piper, Michael Rothenstein, Joseph Hecht, Ian Tyson, and Merlin Evans, amongst others. Waistel reached even greater heights in 1959 with his inclusion in the seminal British Artist Craftsman exhibition organised by the Council of Industrial Design and the Smithsonian. The exhibition toured the United States of America and Canada, introducing British contemporary art to a new audience, with institutions including Newark Museum purchasing Waistel Cooper pieces for their collections. 9 pieces of Waistel's pottery was also included in the Living Today exhibition at the Wakefield Art Gallery in 1959. The pieces were on loan from Bill Ismay, the most important collector of studio pottery in the UK during the second half of the 20th century. The following year, Waistel's work was reproduced in the American published book Ceramics by Glenn Nelson, a ceramics tutor at the University of Minnesota in Duluth, indicating that Waistel had now become a recognized figure on both sides of the Atlantic. The 1960s was perhaps Waistel's most successful period in terms of both the work he produced as well as exhibitions. His pottery by now had a very clear and distinctive voice, characterized by rough surface textures, predominantly in earthy organic tones, often ribbed, patterned or incised, with glazed interior surfaces. A solo exhibition at Hills in July 1960 was swiftly followed in September with an exhibition of 124 pieces of Waistel stoneware in Reykjavik, where Waistel's pottery was shown alongside contemporary furniture by the pioneering modernist designer Sven Jarvau. This exhibition was particularly notable for introducing stoneware clay to the country, probably for the first time, and received considerable press coverage within Iceland. Waistel's inclusion in Michael Casson's important 1967 book, Pottery in Britain Today, had seemingly cemented his reputation as one of the trailblazers of the contemporary British studio pottery scene. Further reproductions of Waistel's pottery were also included in the 1967-68 Decorative Art in Modern Interiors Annual, and articles on the potter were published in Ideal Home and Furnishing magazine. Waistel started withdrawing from exhibitions by the late 70s, preferring to sell his work direct to commercial galleries or to intrepid explorers from the gardens at Colburn. In 1982, after the premature death of his wife Joan from cancer, Waistel relocated to Penzance, opening a small gallery in the Barbican on the harbour side. Waistel also started producing monumental, carved abstract sculptures of organic interlocking forms. He had created abstract ceramic sculptures early in his career, from the late 1950s, albeit on a much smaller scale. 3 exhibitions in 2021 have helped revive interest in Waistel and his ceramics. The Yorkshire Tea Ceremony, held at York Art Gallery. Dag Glamour, Ceramics from Icelandic Clay 1930 to 1970 at the Design Museum, Iceland, and one at the Fine Arts Society. Along with notable potters Hans Cooper and Lucy Ree, Waistel was a major force in the evolution of ceramics, instigating what would become a revolution. Tired, elaborately decorated Victorian glazed pots were eschewed in favour of rough-textured sculptural pieces and pure forms. Waistel Cooper deserves a place in history, not only amongst the best potters of the 20th century, but in the pantheon of the greatest British artists.
We sing the songs the forest holds. Leaves they fall upon this hallowed ground.